Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Bill loses it over Grace's trick, and Luna wakes Sheila and Lee up. When Luna Nozawa woke up to Sheila Sharp and Lee Finnegan, Bill Spencer lost it over Grace Buckingham's ruse. Sheila was still in shock at seeing Luna alive in Lee's care when Monday's B&B program began. Sheila questioned Lee about why she had saved Luna, and Lee explained that it had changed when she saw her niece and granddaughter on the operating table, both of them defenseless. Lee recognized the possibility that Luna would be given another shot since she held Poppy Nozawa responsible for Luna's dysfunctional upbringing. Because keeping Luna in the hospital would have resulted in her being sent back to prison, Lee chose to try to rehabilitate her instead. Luna is concerned about how long it was taking her to wake up after Lee discussed her chance for atonement. After a while, Sheila held Luna's hand and urged her to open her eyes with a charming phrase. At last, Luna opened her eyes and found it difficult to concentrate on the dark shapes before her. Luna returned the smile when Sheila claimed that her grandmothers were present and she and Lee both grinned in relief. Sheila woke Luna, and Lee was grateful and in awe. Will Spencer and Electra Forrester had some romantic moments at Forrester Creations before thinking back on all the drama involving Luna and Liam Spencer. Ivy Forrester asked Will for confirmation after learning that Liam would be alright and received it. Later, Ivy became a little teary-eyed with Electra, who recognized how much Liam meant to her. John Finnegan texted Liam at the Spencer mansion to let him know that Grace had actually surrendered herself at the police station. Liam knew it was time to include Bill in the conversation as he and Hope Logan were still coming to terms with the idea that Grace had lied about everything. Even though Liam was aware that his father would go nuclear, he called Bill away from a discussion with Katie Logan. Liam and Hope updated Bill on Grace's deceit after he arrived, curious about what was happening. Bill was upset that Grace had fabricated everything and used medicine that looked like cancer symptoms to make Liam believe he was unwell. Naturally, Bill also discovered that Grace had defrauded him of $1 million to settle Reese Buckingham's gambling debts and that the surgery was a hoax. Bitch would pay well, Bill insisted, and she would regret she had never met him. Liam rages, Finn's police update, and Bill's vow. Liam Spencer and Bill Spencer to further their relationship. John Finnegan ought to have an update regarding Grace Buckingham's escort to the police station in the interim. Let's discuss the upcoming events in the CBS soap opera as you continue reading. The fury of Bill Spencer. Let's start with Bill telling Katie Logan about Grace's bravery after he just left Forrester Creations. But as soon as Bill entered the house, Liam and Hope Logan gave him a startling information regarding the brain cancer. When Bill discovered that Grace had defrauded them all, he was appalled. The fury of Liam Spencer. Bill has promised to hold Grace accountable for her actions. He will spend some quality time with his son in the meanwhile. The father and son were silent prior to the tumor. Despite their violent altercation, Liam was able to forgive many people, including his father, because of the fictitious tumor. Liam and other people lost several months of their lives as a result of Grace's deception. Not to mention the awful side effects of receiving prescriptions for drugs that aren't needed. The phony brain operation was another. Liam may have died from any one of those causes. Will they band together to exact revenge on Grace? John Finnegan's report. After dropping Grace off at the police station, Finn may have an update, according to spoilers for Tuesday, August 12's episode of The Bold and the Beautiful. After coercing the doctor into confessing, Finn led him to the police. Liam was notified via text by Finn that Grace had just surrendered herself in. However, the cops often don't get in the way of Bill's vows. I'm curious as to how Bill intends to make Grace pay. Carter Walton. I wonder when Hope will fully disclose Grace's transgression to Carter. Could Liam and Hope have another chance if he is no longer dying? Lee Finnegan and Sheila Carter Sharp may also see further developments. What comes when Luna Nozawa awakens from her coma? Bill Spencer's volcanic rage upon uncovering the depths of Grace Buckingham's cruel deception, a convergence of vulnerability and vengeance that promised irrevocable consequences. Within the sterile, hushed confines of Lee Finnegan's meticulously controlled environment, the air remained thick with the residue of Sheila Sharp's paralyzing shock, her predatory instincts momentarily frozen by the impossible sight before her. Luna, pale but alive, breathing steadily under Lee's vigilant care, a living, breathing rebuttal to the narrative of finality Sheila had perhaps secretly, guiltily, or even hopefully, begun to accept. Sheila's voice, stripped of its usual calculated menace and laced instead with a raw, disbelieving tremor, cut through the quiet, demanding an explanation from the woman she saw as her perpetual adversary. Why, Lee? Why save her? Lee's response, delivered with a quiet intensity that surprised even herself, spoke of a profound, involuntary shift catalyzed by the stark vulnerability laid bare on the operating table. Not just Luna, the niece whose chaotic life she'd largely dismissed, but the undeniable reality of her granddaughter, a shared bloodline confronting her professional detachment. Things changed, Lee stated, her gaze fixed on Luna's peaceful face, seeing her there, helpless, mine, yours. This epiphany, however, came intertwined with a deep-seated resentment directed squarely at Papi Nozawa, deemed solely responsible for Luna's rotten upbringing, the years of instability and questionable choices that had led the girl down a perilous path. Yet, in this charged moment, Lee's rigid worldview cracked open, revealing a startling potential: redemption. This wasn't merely about saving a life, it was about offering a meticulously orchestrated second chance, a complete overhaul under Lee's exacting standards. Hence the secrecy, the removal from the hospital's bureaucratic reach. Returning Luna meant returning her to prison, an outcome Lee now deemed unacceptable for the project of rehabilitation she envisioned. But as Lee voiced her carefully constructed plans for Luna's future redemption, a flicker of uncharacteristic anxiety surfaced, her clinical control fraying at the edges as she confessed her growing worry. How long is it taking her to wake up? This unspoken fear hung heavy until Sheila, driven by a complex storm of guilt, possessiveness, and a nascent, terrifyingly genuine grandmotherly impulse, moved with surprising gentleness. She took Luna's limp hand in her own, her voice softening into an unfamiliar cadence, weaving a sweet, coaxing speech that pleaded, promised, and cajoled, urging her granddaughter back to the light, her words a stark contrast to the venom she usually spewed, a testament to the primal pull of blood and the strange alchemy of this shared crisis. And then, the miracle Lee's science couldn't guarantee, Luna's eyelids fluttered, a fragile dance against pale skin, her eyes struggling to focus on the blurred figures leaning over her, shape swimming in a haze of returning sensation. Sheila, her own eyes suspiciously bright, leaned closer, her voice thick with an emotion rarely heard. It's okay, sweetheart. Your grandmas are here. We're both right here. The relief that washed over Sheila's face as she exchanged a tremulous, genuine smile with Lee was mirrored in the doctor's own stunned expression. In that shared look, decades of enmity were momentarily suspended by the sheer, overwhelming power of this awakening. Luna, her vision clearing, managed a weak, confused smile in return, a silent acknowledgement of the unexpected faces claiming her. Lee, overcome, turned to Sheila, her voice hushed with awe and a grudging, profound gratitude that momentarily eclipsed every past transgression. You did it. You reached her. This fragile tableau of nascent connection and unexpected truth stood in stark, almost jarring contrast to the tempest brewing miles away at the opulent Spencer mansion. Simultaneously, within the sleek, modern confines of Forrester Creations, a pocket of youthful normalcy persisted, albeit tinged with the recent chaos. Will Spencer and Electra Forrester, finding solace in their budding romance, shared tender, lovey-dovey moments, a brief respite before their conversation inevitably turned to the seismic events surrounding Luna and Will's father, Liam. The air still crackled with the residual tension of betrayal, imprisonment, and near death. Ivy Forrester, seeking an anchor in the storm, sought out Will, needing explicit confirmation that Liam, her cousin and a constant in her life, was truly out of danger. Will's reassurance provided a tangible relief, a knot of anxiety loosening within her. Later, Ivy found herself confiding in Electra, her emotions bubbling close to the surface as she spoke of Liam's importance, the years of shared history and family bonds making his recent ordeal profoundly personal. Electra, understanding the depth of Ivy's connection, offered quiet empathy, a grounding presence amidst the familial turmoil. Back at the Spencer residence, Liam himself was grappling with the final, ugly pieces of Grace Buckingham's monstrous puzzle falling into place. A text from Finn confirmed the cold, hard truth: Grace had walked into the police station and surrendered. As Liam and Hope Logan sat together, trying to process the sheer magnitude of the deception, the fake illness, the manipulated symptoms, the orchestrated fear, the weight of what needed to be done settled heavily on Liam's shoulders. He knew, with absolute certainty, that the time had come to loop in his father. "He's going to go nuclear," Liam stated flatly to Hope, the dread palpable in his voice, envisioning the inevitable thermonuclear reaction brewing within Bill Spencer. Despite the awkward timing, Bill was deep in conversation with Katie Logan, another complex thread in the Spencer family tapestry. Liam made the call, summoning his father with an urgency that brooked no delay. Bill arrived, his usual commanding presence tinged with impatience and a flicker of concern at the interruption. "What's going on? What's so urgent?" he demanded. What followed was a verbal detonation sequence. Liam and Hope, their voices heavy with the residue of betrayal, laid out the full, sordid truth of Grace's machinations, the elaborate ruse of Liam's illness, chemically induced through medication designed to mimic terrifying cancer symptoms, the psychological torture inflicted upon her own son and everyone who cared for him. Then came the final, galling twist. The entire surgical narrative, the desperate plea for funds to save Liam's life, was nothing but a grotesque charade. The $1 million Bill had willingly, even desperately, handed over hadn't funded a life-saving operation. It had served as a payoff, a ransom to clear Reese Buckingham's crippling gambling debts. The revelation hit Bill like a physical blow. His face, a mask of controlled power moments before, transformed. Fury, pure and incandescent, radiated from him, darkening his features, tightening his jaw into granite. The air in the room crackled with a sudden, terrifying shift in energy. Bill Spencer, the titan of industry accustomed to dominating every room, every situation, had been played. Not just played, but emotionally eviscerated, his deepest paternal fears exploited, his wealth stolen under the vilest pretense imaginable. The thought of Grace manipulating his love for Liam, turning his desperation into her financial salvation, ignited a core of white-hot rage that promised annihilation. His voice, when it finally emerged, was a low, dangerous growl, vibrating with suppressed violence, every syllable dripping with venomous intent. "That bitch," he seethed, the word a curse spat into the tense silence. "She exploited my son. She terrified him. She terrorized us." He paused, the sheer magnitude of the betrayal seeming to fuel the inferno within him. "She thinks she can steal from me? Use my family like pawns?" Bill's eyes, burning with an almost feral light, locked onto an unseen point, visualizing Grace Buckingham. The promise that followed wasn't shouted, it was delivered with a chilling, absolute certainty that resonated deeper than any bellow. "She will pay dearly." The final sentence hung in the air, a sentence of its own, heavy and irrevocable. She will wish to God she never crossed paths with Bill Spencer. This declaration wasn't just anger, it was a vow of total war, a promise of ruin meticulously planned and ruthlessly executed, signaling the unleashing of a force of nature with unlimited resources and a singular, terrifying focus, the utter destruction of Grace Buckingham. The fragile piece of Luna's awakening, the tentative bridge built between Sheila and Lee over a shared grandchild, seemed worlds away from the thermonuclear winter Bill Spencer had just declared upon Grace, leaving the future fractured between the delicate hope of redemption and the scorched earth promise of vengeance. Bill Spencer and his son, Liam. Mere hours ago, Bill had swept through the grand foyer radiating triumphant relief, fresh from Forrester Creations where he'd effusively praised Grace Buckingham to Katie Logan, lauding the woman as a selfless savior who had miraculously guided Liam back from the precipice of death. That relief, that fragile, hard-won gratitude, now lay shattered at his feet like priceless crystal dashed against marble, replaced by a volcanic rage that darkened his face and vibrated through his clenched fists. Hope Logan's hesitant, tear-choked revelation, the monstrous, unfathomable lie about Liam's brain cancer, had detonated within him. The horror wasn't just the deception, it was the sheer, sadistic scale of it. Grace hadn't merely told a lie, she had meticulously constructed an alternate, terrifying reality, weaponizing their deepest fears, exploiting their rawest vulnerabilities, and orchestrating a months-long charade that had consumed their lives, their emotions, and very nearly Liam's physical well-being. Bill's initial paralysis gave way to a guttural sound, half roar, half sob, his eyes, usually sharp with calculation, now burning with pure, undiluted fury. She what? The word scraped raw from his throat, laden with disbelief morphing rapidly into incandescent wrath. That viper, she manufactured this? She poisoned us all with this fiction of dying? Every word Hope uttered, the fabricated diagnosis, the unnecessary, potentially lethal medications leaching toxins into Liam's healthy body, the grotesque pantomime of brain surgery, was another lash against Bill's soul. He saw it now, the subtle manipulations, the conveniently timed updates, the way Grace positioned herself as the indispensable lifeline, all while weaving a web of despair around his son. The realization that Liam had endured invasive procedures, ingested chemicals his body never needed, lived under the crushing shadow of a death sentence that never existed, it was an assault Bill felt viscerally, a violation that transcended mere anger and plunged into the primal territory of a father's protective fury. His voice dropped to a dangerous, icy whisper, yet it carried the weight of a coming storm, a vow etched in steel: she will pay. Grace Buckingham will pay for every second of fear, every drop of anguish, every milligram of poison she forced into my son. I will see her utterly destroyed. This I swear. This oath, born in the crucible of betrayal, wasn't just a promise, it was the chilling declaration of a Spencer patriarch unleashed, a force of nature promising retribution far beyond the confines of any courtroom. Beside him, Liam Spencer was a portrait of fury barely contained, a different shade of rage from his father's calculated storm. His was the white-hot burn of the victim, the one who had lived the lie, who had felt death's cold breath on his neck every single day. Where Bill's anger radiated outward like shrapnel, Liam's was coiled inward, vibrating through his tense frame, his knuckles white where he gripped the armrest of a plush sofa. The news hadn't brought relief, it had unleashed a torrent of delayed fury. The months of despair, the agonizing goodbyes whispered to Hope, to his daughter Beth, the desperate scramble to mend fractured relationships before time ran out, it had all been a monstrous joke orchestrated by a woman he'd trusted implicitly. Months, Liam spat, the word tasting like ash. She stole months of my life. Months I spent mourning myself, begging forgiveness, thinking every headache was the end. His mind flashed to the bitter, explosive fight with Bill that had fractured their bond, a chasm seemingly too wide to bridge. The fake tumor, ironically, had been the catalyst for reconciliation. Facing his own mortality, real or imagined, had forced Liam to let go of past grievances, to grant Bill the forgiveness he'd withheld for years. Now, that hard-won peace felt tainted, purchased with counterfeit currency. The forgiveness he'd offered his father, the vulnerability he'd shown, had been manipulated by Grace's lie. And the cost? Not just time, but his very health. The drugs, Dad, Liam continued, his voice thick with disgust and a lingering tremor of fear. Who knows what damage they did? And that surgery, lying there, thinking they were cutting into my brain. He shuddered, the memory visceral. Any one of those things, a bad reaction, an infection, the stress alone, could have killed me. She didn't just lie, she played Russian roulette with my life. The betrayal cut deeper than the medical fraud. Grace had weaponized his love for his family, his desire for redemption, turning his own impending death into a tool for, what? Control? Some perverse sense of power? The ambiguity of her motive only fueled Liam's rage. He saw the chilling determination in his father's eyes, heard the deadly promise in Bill's vow. A part of him, the part still raw from the deception, the part that felt fundamentally violated, resonated with that primal call for vengeance. Would they stand together against the architect of their shared nightmare? The unspoken question hung heavy between them, a new, dark potential bond forged in the fires of their mutual fury, a stark contrast to the fragile peace built on false hope. The charged atmosphere crackled further as John Finnegan entered the mansion, his expression a complex mix of professional duty and profound personal satisfaction. He carried the tangible update cutting through the Spencer's suffocating rage. She's in custody, Finn stated without preamble, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. His own journey to this moment had been fraught, confronting the duplicitous Dr. Buckingham, leveraging his medical authority and steely resolve to break through her layers of practiced deceit, forcing the confession that confirmed the Spencer's worst fears. Watching the facade crumble, hearing her admit to the elaborate, malicious hoax, had been its own kind of grim vindication. He'd personally escorted her to the police station, ensuring there was no escape, no last-minute manipulation. "I texted you, Liam, right after she was processed," Finn added, glancing at the younger Spencer. Full confession on record, thanks to some persuasive conversation beforehand. She admitted to fabricating the diagnosis, prescribing the unnecessary medications, staging the surgery reports, the whole sordid scheme. He detailed the charges piling up: fraud, practicing medicine without a valid license in this context, given the deception, assault through the administration of harmful substances, reckless endangerment, a litany of crimes reflecting the multifaceted nature of her betrayal. The legal wheels were now undeniably in motion. Yet, as Finn delivered this update, he couldn't ignore the predatory stillness that had settled over Bill Spencer. The news of police involvement, of due process taking its course, didn't soften the older man's features, it seemed to harden them. Finn knew the Spencer reputation, the vast resources, the ruthless efficiency that often operated in the shadows where the law's reach grew dim. Bill's earlier vow hadn't been about justice, it had been about punishment, personal and absolute. Finn's professional satisfaction was tempered by a flicker of unease. "The police have her, Bill," Finn reiterated, a subtle emphasis on the word police, a quiet plea for restraint. "The system will handle this." But the icy glint in Bill's eyes, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw, spoke volumes. Finn understood, Grace Buckingham facing a judge and jury might satisfy the law, but it likely wouldn't satisfy Bill Spencer's primal need for retribution. The police station was just the first stop. Bill's vow promised a far darker, more personal reckoning, and Finn could only watch, caught between